Thank you. Mr. President, I want to thank my friends and colleagues from Montana, Alaska, and Iowa for being here. I particularly want to thank Lieutenant Colonel Ernst for her service. She's now a veteran, but she served bravely. And I want to thank my friend from Alaska. He's a Marine. He still answers the call, and he's still doing the work here in the Senate, but prepared to go on a moment's notice wherever we have to go to defend freedom. And ladies and gentlemen, I come from North Carolina. This is almost getting personal with me, and I'm going to talk a little bit about it. But I also want to explain to people who may be watching this on the television or those in the gallery what we're talking about. You use the word filibuster, and it's kind of hard to understand. It's pretty straightforward. The Democratic Conference has decided to say no to funding our troops. They've decided to say no to providing them a much-deserved pay raise. They've decided to say no to funding important training that's necessary to make sure that they can complete these highly dangerous and complex missions wherever a threat may occur. Why is it personal to me in North Carolina? Because I've got about 100,000 active duty personnel in North Carolina. Fort Bragg in North Carolina is the home of the Global Response Force. That is the base that gets the call from the president when, at a moment's notice, we may have to send hundreds or thousands of men and women in airplanes to drop out of them anywhere in the world. And it's not just jumping out with a parachute. It's jumping out with 100 pounds of equipment attached to you. It's dropping earth movers, weather stations, a small city operation anywhere in the world to support a relief effort or to support a combat mission. That takes training. That takes constant training. It takes hours and hours of training to make sure that they can complete their mission, but even as important, to make sure they do it safely and that they themselves do not get injured and killed in the process. Now, you've already heard it said multiple times before, but I think it bears repeating. Why on earth would the minority leader prevent us from moving to a vote? A filibuster is nothing more than saying no to sending this bill to the president's desk. After 30 Democratic members in Appropriations said yes, we only need 6 of them to move this bill to the president's desk. But I guess that the minority leader has a hammerlock on all of the members who want to vote for this bill. But they won't come down to this floor and show the courage and commitment to the men and women in uniform to do the right thing. That's where we are. That's why it's personal to me. What do I tell the 100,000 active duty military in North Carolina when I go home? I'm sorry, but the majority of the minority leaders decided that you're not a priority. In spite of the fact that we go to Senate Armed Services Committee hearings weekly and we hear that the threat level has never been greater, in spite of the fact that we see the rise of ISIS across all of the Middle East and now in Europe and threatening our homeland, in spite of all of these threats, we tell the men and women in uniform, their commanders, that politics is over the principle of funding our troops and saving our nation, protecting our nation. I think that that's despicable. We know that we have enough votes to send this bill to the president because they voted for it before. We only need 1/3 of them to vote for this now and send it to the president's desk. I could go on, and if we have time, I hope that Senator Sullivan will ask me some questions because I spend a lot of time down at Camp Lejeune at Fort Bragg. Ask me about whether or not the leader of FORSCOM and the leaders down there responsible for the 82nd Airborne, the 18th Airborne Corps, thinks they have enough money and that they can keep our men and women safe. Ask them about the conditions at Camp Lejeune and the conditions we ask these men and women to serve in after we tell them we're not going to give you money to keep you safe so that you can complete your mission. This is politics at its worst. We need to send this bill to the president's desk. We need to show respect for the men and women who have sworn an oath to lay down their life for the cause of freedom. This is a failure on the part of the minority leader and on the part of any other person who would sit there and refuse to move through a bill that every single one of them in the Appropriations Committee supported. And Senator Sullivan, I appreciate you elevating this dialogue to the extent that you will. And we shouldn't stop until we fulfill the promise. First and foremost, our constitutional obligation is to protect this nation. And the people who are voting against this bill, preventing it from going to the desk, in my opinion, are failing to withhold and live up to their oath. And Senator Sullivan and Senator Ernst, again, I want to thank you for your service, and I want to thank you for bringing this to the attention of the American people.